Hi, my name is Michelle Brewer, and I am presenting His Hawaiian Excellency by Nicholas Schweizer. Dr. Schweizer wrote this novel in the 1980s because he wanted to tell the story of a part of the story of the overthrow that wasn't widely known at this time. He did extensive research and eventually found the Iokea family and found the grandson of Curtis Iokea, who was a diplomat and a military member of the Kingdom of Hawaii. This novel is a historical novel, which it's very fact-based, but it has some fictional aspects to it. It was written in a framed narrative, which is a story within a story. The setting is at Queen Liliuokalani's 100th birthday celebration, where Curtis Iokea is an old man at this time. And as he's sitting at the birthday celebration, he has 3 flashbacks of his life in Hawaii. The setting begins at Queen Liliuokalani's 100th birthday in 1938. Now, she died in 1917, so she's obviously not there. But Curtis P. Iokea, who was a retired colonel, is at this birthday celebration. He goes on to say that he doesn't believe the celebration is really doing a justice for the Queen's life, and he dozes off and has 3 flashbacks of his life. If you look to the left side of the screen, I have 3 main settings in this book. There's 3 storylines in the novel, which is his 3 flashbacks that he has. The first flashback is Tsar Alexander III's coronation, where he travels to Russia. He travels across the world, sailing from Hawaii to San Francisco, takes a train across America to New York, sails to Europe, where he takes another train to Russia. On the train to Russia, he meets a few people along the way. Tanya, the Russian nihilist, a passionate revolutionary, and he also meets Count von Lambsdorff. In Russia, he attends Tsar Alexander III's coronation, where he wins the hearts and minds of the dignitaries from all over the world. People from all over the world are at the Tsar's coronation, and they acknowledge Hawaii as an independent nation. The second flashback is at Iolani Palace, between Iolani Palace and Iolani Hale. The third flashback is at Queen Victoria's Jubilee in England. And if you look to the right side of the screen, this is during the second flashback. I'm going to go into more detail. And it's when the Queen announces that she has made a new constitution to replace the bayonet constitution. She goes over to the Iolani Hale to announce the constitution, and she comes back to the palace immediately after. After she announced the new constitution, there was a lot going on between Iolani Palace and where the missionary party was creating a new committee to try to counter the Queen. They were in a building creating what would be called the Committee of Safety, using the USS Boston as a power play against the Queen. In the upper right-hand corner, there's the throne room, and this is where Queen Liliuokalani comes out and announces that the Constitution is going to be postponed to another time. On January 17th at 2 p.m., the Committee of Safety, which was made up of 13 men, had Henry E. Cooper stand in front of the Iolani Palace and read a proclamation that abolished the monarchy and took away any power from the Queen. At that time, they had the Marines come in to use as a force in the takeover. For the main characters, I divided the categories into 3 because Colonel Curtis Iokea has 3 flashbacks, so there's 3 different storylines. So these are the 3 different flashbacks over his life. Curtis Iokea is the main character. He was not a colonel the entire time. He evolves throughout the book. In Russia, he is in his late 20s, and he is sent from King Kalakaua. He's a military officer and a Hawaiian diplomat in Russia. He ends up being a colonel after the U.S. annexed Hawaii. He trusts the missionaries and even thinks they've done good things for Hawaii. Henry Poor is his trusted secretary. He accompanied him on his trip to Tsar Alexander III's coronation. He does not trust the missionary. He's half Hawaiian and half Haole, but he's very patriotic to Hawaii. He believed in David Mala's prophecies that the sons and grandsons of the missionaries were going to commit high treason. He falls in love with Tanya, who's a passionate Russian nihilist. There's Tsar Alexander III. He's the Tsar of Russia, and it is his coronation that everyone's going to. Other characters is Tanya. She's a young Russian nihilist against the monarchy and the Tsar. They meet her on the train to the coronation. She's from a wealthy family, passionate revolutionary, passionate about Russia, and Henry Poor falls in love with her. Then there's Count von Lambsdorff. He recognizes the Tara Leaf's insignia on Iokea's uniform when they're on the train on the way to Russia. They have a respected conversation on this train about politics in Hawaii. There's international dignitaries that are at the coronation that he wins over their hearts and minds of the dignitaries and royals. And then there's Major. He is on the ship. He's a British officer that's on the ship going through the Suez Canal. They talk history, missionaries, and eventually about Captain Cook. He says that the Hawaiians killed the greatest discoverer history ever had, and then they ate that. Then he accused the Hawaiians of eating him. Iokea corrects his stereotype and educates him about Hawaii. In the second category, you see Queen Liliuokalani. It's about the takeover, so she's one of the main characters. Then there's Sanford Dole below her. He's the son of a Calvinist missionary. He was a friend to the queen and ends up betraying her, although he has a conflict of conscience. He does want Hawaii to be a republic for economic purposes, but he is for the monarchy too. He preferred a diplomatic approach for Hawaii rather than force. Loren Thurston, he is a radical, a son of a Calvinist. He thought it was his duty to rid the monarchy, and he really wanted to annex Hawaii to the U.S. He is the main instigator of the Committee of Safety, which is the group that overtook Queen Liliuokalani. The Committee of Safety is 13 men who, like I said, had the Queen's take over. And then there's other characters. There's Nawahi, who is a Hawaiian, he is a Hawaiian that kept people's morale up with his speeches. The USS Boston is a Navy warship with cannons and plays a major role in the takeover. The Calvinist missionaries are obviously influential in the takeover. In the third phase, at Queen Victoria's Jubilee, there's Queen Victoria and also Curtis Iokea. I put Queen Kapiolani and Princess Liliuokalani because they go to Queen Victoria's first Jubilee, and she was very enamored with them. When he goes back to the second Jubilee, or to the Diamond Jubilee, she is very disappointed with him and acknowledges that he let Hawaii to be taken over. In the picture in the lower, there's a picture of Sanford Dole. He's not in England, but this picture is of Iokea's right behind him, and he's serving for the Republic of Hawaii, opposed to the Kingdom of Hawaii, when Sanford Dole was the president of the provisionary government. The overarching themes, one being the Kingdom of Hawaii, what Hawaii was to the outside world, how the outside world viewed Hawaii, that they were respected as an independent nation, as our Alexander's coronation, recognized from the British military officer. At Queen Victoria's Jubilee, she expresses her support of Queen Liliuokalani. There's conversations about conversations between the American Marines about the Queen's right to impose a new constitution. This conversation happened before the coup d'etat. Ultimately, the tragedy as America takes over Hawaii. The novel shows Iokea's pride as a Hawaiian. He corrects stigmas along his journey. And the missionaries' impact, they impacted Hawaii on every level. They taught the Hawaiians how to read and write on a positive note. And in a panic from the Queen's proposal of a new constitution, they manipulated information to overthrow the Queen. And the missionaries believed that the monarchy was rooted in paganism, and they felt it was their duty as Christians to take over. They were opportunistic when giving advantages to the Hales. The quote above, it says, it's from Thurston. "It is up to us to sweep the last vestiges of barbarianism into the sea, just as our Puritan ancestors purged the churches by smashing to butts saints and all the ill-gotten wealth accumulated by the papists. The Hawaiian monarchy has to be cleansed of the trappings of this corrupt monarchy with its pagan overtones." And I think that shows how desperate they were, how extreme they were about overthrowing the monarchy, and the missionary impact was enormous in Hawaii. The overthrow, of course, is a main theme as well. The heartbreak of the Queen, the heartbreak of the people and Iokea, the loyalty of the Hawaiian people and the Queen, and the manipulative nature of the overthrow, headed by Thurston. Ethics in this book, I think that the main ones for me are the missionaries, Sanford Dole's ethical dilemma, and the illegal overthrow. The missionaries was a part of tension between Henry Poor and Iokea. In the first part of the book, they get in an argument about the intentions of the missionaries. Iokea believes they have positive intentions. Henry Poor believes in David Malo's prophecy that they are going to commit treason. And then there's the bayonet constitution that gives advantage to the Haole landowners. The above quote is, "To the Hawaiians, the private ownership of land was a totally foreign concept, regarding land to be just as invisible as air or water. They had sold their shares too cheaply or had forfeited them by not paying annual tax." Iokea says that to show how the Hawaiians got taken advantage of. The bayonet constitution, as we know, gave advantage to landowners. Then there's the Committee of Safety that was essentially the missionary party, and the missionaries in general went to Hawaii and imposed their morals and rules onto the Hawaiian people. Sanford Dole had an ethical dilemma. After the Queen announced a new constitution, the Committee of Safety developed a coup, and they asked Sanford Dole to be the president. He didn't want to at first, and he goes home, and on the way home, he talks to a cab driver who is extremely nice to him and gives all his aloha to him, to Sanford Dole. Sanford Dole had a dream that night. He couldn't sleep and had nightmares about making the decision to be the president or not. He decided to become the president because he thought that Thurston would create more, he was more radical, and he would create destruction to get Hawaii to be part of the United States. And then the illegal overthrow was also an ethical component. Obviously, it was an illegal coup that was based on manipulated information. Thurston had claimed that the American people were in danger to get the USS Boston to give their military support. There were ulterior motives based on Christian authority to overthrow the monarchy. Thurston had a grandiose view of himself. He was very egotistical and just a bad character. Hawaii had international respect as an independent nation before the overthrow. Many countries wanted Hawaii to remain independent. And Iokea has a realization that he ultimately served for the people that betrayed his country at the end, as he was actually working for Sanford Dole in the military after the overthrow. One of the biggest ethical dilemmas was Queen Liliuokalani's decision. After they did the illegal coup, she wanted to fight for her people, but she ultimately decided to step down. She knew that the military would destroy her loyal people. She knew that they would fight for her. She saved them with the hopes that America would know the coup was illegal and that they would ultimately back Hawaii, which they did not. The relevance to this class is how the Pacific was shaped by European influence, or in this case, American influence. The impacts and influences of the capitalistic motives. Essentially, Hawaii was colonized by America. It was given rules and restrictions that caused its ultimate demise, such as the bayonet constitution that was forced upon them. The missionaries were imposing their morals to the native people. They dealt with stereotypes. In Russia, Princess Katya and Nadia have a conversation about Iokea, and they mention the noble savage idea. And then racism, as they were called savages and looked down upon multiple times throughout the book. Thank you, everybody, and thanks for dealing with my voice, as I was lucky enough to get strep throat right at the end of this semester.